Welcome to the Journey Chez Cam. I am so excited to see you here on the first day of school. Well, let's talk a little bit about the routine that we're going to have every single day. First thing that you'll notice is that we have a code for the day. And we are in the first quarter, the first week, and the first day. This number will guide both of us through the whole year. Well, we need to have a few things to start the class, and we are always going to have two questions that I will put up here for you on a document once I introduce the day. And you will need to get a composition notebook that looks something like this. And it is bound so that all of the questions that are going to be given to you each day will have two questions. I call them the warm-up questions, and you'll need to write them down in your composition notebook with the date and answer them to the best of your ability. And then we'll go over them. And that's the major routine of how we're going to learn the concepts as we go. And this composition notebook will be very, very close to your heart because it's going to guide you through all of the things that we need to know. And I will always refer back to these things. And when you're trying to do your assignments, it'll help you to have this to look back. And I would also keep the notes that you take in the same composition notebook. That way everything is together, and when you need to find something, it's right there. That's the first thing that we need to get. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say, please do the two warm-up questions to the best of your ability, and we'll discuss them in a moment. Question number 1 asks for us to just describe the atom and give the charges of the subatomic particles. Now, I believe that even though this is the very first day of school, you've had this in the past and you probably have a pretty good idea of what the atom looks like. Well, we have a picture of the atom that's on the warm-up. However, in general, we see that the center of the atom has a nucleus. And in the nucleus, we have protons and neutrons. Now, a proton has a positive charge, and a neutron, oftentimes students will say it's neutral. Well, yes, it is neutral, but we need a mathematical term to describe what neutral is, and therefore we will use a 0. And then outside of the nucleus, we have the electrons. And the electrons are not going in this circular orbit as I have drawn this. This is the Bohr model. And we know that the Bohr model is not exactly the way the atom is. However, it gives us a basic representation of the atom. And the electrons have a negative charge. That would be a basic description of the atom. Now, the center of the atom is very, very dense. It is so dense, it is as small as a tiny little nickel, and inside that nickel is the mass of a huge building or a aircraft carrier fully loaded with 22 planes. It's just extremely dense in that little tiny area. And the electrons are way far away. And this is an example, a very simplified diagram of the atom. And I'll be right back to discuss number 2. Number 2 asks, what is an isotope? Well, an isotope is one of 2 or more atoms having the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. Therefore, it is the same element, but it has a different mass. And we're going to be talking indeed in depth about isotopes. And we'll get ready to take some notes, and I'll see you in a moment. Let's take some notes on isotopes. Well, we just learned what an isotope was. And here I have a common isotope, carbon-14. And we notice the top number is the mass, the atomic mass. And we give it an A, and that would be the top number. The bottom number, notice that I didn't give the bottom number because we can look on any periodic chart and determine what it is. It's the atomic number. The atomic number for carbon is 6. And it is also a Z for atomic number. Well, the atomic number is also equal to the number of protons. And for us, the number of protons will never, never, never change. It's always, always, always the atomic number is equal to the number of protons, because we're not going to do any nuclear experiments here. And so we're not going to mess with that nucleus. We're just going to leave it with 6 protons, or however many protons those elements have. And so the bottom number, we just look on a periodic chart to determine the atomic number. Well, both of these carbons have the same atomic number, the same number of protons, and that would be 6. Well, we know that the atomic mass is equal to the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. And we know that the atomic mass equals the atomic number, which is the number of protons plus neutrons. And therefore, to figure out the number of neutrons, we take the atomic mass and we subtract the atomic number to get the number of neutrons. Well, let's apply this to our 2 isotopes. We subtract these 2 numbers, and here we get 8 neutrons. We subtract these 2 numbers and we get 6 neutrons. And by definition, that's what isotopes are. They are the same element, the same number of protons, different number of neutrons, different atomic mass. That's a little bit of notes for us today. And next, we're going to talk about the first aid packet. Very, very important, that first aid packet. So, I'll be right back. Now we need to discuss the first aid packet. I call it the first aid packet, but it's actually labeled General Chemistry Introduction Packet. Well, it has all kinds of information that we'll be using all year. And the very first thing is what's in the packet. Then there is a letter to the parent guardians for a general overview of what the Journey Chez Chem is all about. And also there is some basic guidelines before this that are given to you to understand just the general focus of the overall class. Then we have a general syllabus of the topics, and we will be discussing 16 different topics this year. And we have 4 topics per quarter. Then we have general class rules. I'm sure you've seen lots of class rules, and these are pretty much like that. Well, then a very important part, a safety letter that's required to be signed by you and your guardian. And also, you will need to be taking a safety quiz. And the safety quiz is based on the safety rules that are given in the packet. And it's required that you have 80% on the safety quiz. And you can take it as many times as you want because we need to be safe. It's the only quiz all year that you can take as many times as you want until you get that 80%. And that will be announced by your facilitator. Then we have the lab report guidelines. And every lab is a little bit different, but it always requires you to write it up on your own paper with the title, the objective, the data table, the conclusions, and further investigations, depending upon the specifics of each lab. And that will be handed in to be scored by the facilitator. And then we have the grade determination, and let's discuss a little bit about how we determine your quarter grade. Well, first of all, we have assessments. And we know that they are also called tests. But I like assessments. It's not quite so scary. Well, that's 40% of the overall quarter grade. And tests only affect tests. Then we have quizzes. And quizzes are 20%. Now, every quarter you will have a warm-up quiz where you are allowed to use your composition notebook. You're given 5 problems, and each problem is worth 20 points because everything that's graded, almost everything, is 100%, 100 points. And therefore, you have 5 questions, each worth 20 points, giving me 100 points. And there will be critical numbers or critical information left out that if you don't have your composition notebook up to date and with all the information, then you might not have the information required to do that warm-up quiz. And it's very important that as we go through the answers to the warm-ups, that you make sure that the information in your composition notebook is correct, because we'll refer to that as our study guide often. It's the key to success in the whole class. So it's very important that we do our warm-ups and make sure that we have the correct answers as we go. And then we also have the lab write-ups. As we discussed, the format is given to you in the packet. The labs are 20% of the overall quarter grade. And then finally, we have other. That's everything else, and that's 20%. Now, one of the other grades is your assessments of your doing the assignments as we go. They will be checked on a random basis, and it's only checked for completion. If it's complete, you get a check. That's 10 out of 10 points. If something's missing, and we oftentimes have a 4-page review sheet before every assessment, and if you do 3.5 pages, it's still just a check minus, which is only 5 out of 10 points. So we need to make sure that we attempt in some form to do every single problem given. And then if you don't do it, it's a 0. And then those 10 checks are added up for one grade of 100 that goes in the other categories. And this gives us an idea of if the assignments are being done, which is very critical for understanding the work that we're doing. And then another thing that's in the other category, or one of my most favorite things, they're called journal cards. Now, journal cards is where you're allowed to go out and read an article in a magazine anywhere you want. You can pick it. It's up to you. I give a general topic. For example, the first one is about elements. You'll find an article in a magazine about an element. It could be about gold jewelry. It could be about diamond mining in South Africa. It could be about copper mines. There's just many, many ways that we can find different articles that mention some kind of an element in it. Even coal is all about carbon and carbon dating. There's just a variety of things, and you can find things that interest you. You can use any magazine you like. You could use Sports Illustrated, and that would be fine as long as the article has some mention of an element in it. Well, then there are requirements as how the journal card is written up. And we must always put our name, date, and time of day on the journal card. Then we give the topic. And the journal card is always a 5x8 file card looking very much like this. So we give the topic, that's worth 5 points. Then we give the bibliographic information, and that would be an MLA format. And an example is given to you on the worksheet that has the journal cards and the due dates for those as well. And then you write a summary of the article. And then you give an objective statement about the magazine. And students have a very difficult time with this. It is not the objective of the magazine. It is an objective statement, which means it is not a personal opinion. It's a general statement. This magazine is published on a weekly basis. This magazine is geared for people that are interested in current events. Just a general statement about the magazine. And then you get to write a personal reaction to the article. And you have to fill up the whole card. One side of the whole card needs to be written on. And that's a journal card. And they're very easy to do, and they're kind of fun. And you get to learn something new outside of the classroom, because chemistry is everywhere. And then you have a periodic chart that we'll be using all year that's given in the packet. And you'll notice that that periodic chart does not have the names on it. It only has the symbols. And symbols are always the first letter is capital and the second letter is lowercase. And then finally on that page are 50 elements in symbol form that we are going to have a quiz on 115. I would suggest that you take a piece of paper and you make it a hot dog, that you write the symbols on one side of the paper and the word on the other side of the paper. And remember, this is a written assessment, and therefore I need to write it down. I can't just look at it and remember. It doesn't sink in. I have to write it, and that's how I learn to remember them. Those are the 50 elements that you'll be responsible for all year. And I'll figure that after this quiz that you know them. And that's to be expected to come up. So you have some time to work on that. You have all week to work a few a day. I would suggest that you do a few a day. That's always a good idea. Not to let it pile up, because it piles up fast. And we need to keep up, and I'm sure you will, and I know you'll do very well at this. And I'm just so excited that you're here with me, and I just can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bye.